So 3 arrests by 18, chicken dinners straight from the garbage. And now this neck-tatted janitor flips rock bottom into a 22K course launch without spending a dime on ads. I'm Lennox Saint. I quit law to write on Threads. Now I help others do the same. Today, Parker Worth shares how storytelling turned his mess into multi-six-figure magic. We're talking about from chaos to cash, a secret neural storytelling hack, the exact frameworks that Parker used that you can steal right now, plus his 6-word story trick that will hit you like a truck around minute 10. And with that being said, Parker, welcome. You've openly gone from dropout with 3 arrests to entrepreneur. To get started, tell me something you haven't shared about that journey. It might be a brutal lesson or an insane moment from those janitor days that still fuels you today.
Yeah, I was a janitor. I dropped out of high school because I was a bad kid. Got in a lot of trouble and thought that at one point in my life I would be destined to be in custodial services for the next 40 years. There's a lot of good lessons that you have to work a job to climb your way up. I'll never forget my first day working as a janitor. I was working at a ski resort, and the first day was the Winter Special Olympics, and it was absolute chaos. Every bathroom was ruined, and it was just constant upkeep. After that, I realized I needed skills that society found valuable, so I ended up going to a trade school. I became an electrician and got pretty lucky. I got a gig working on military bases and embassies, so I went to over 40 countries. Traveling. I spent about 3 years in West Africa, Central Africa, a lot of dangerous places. Went to Kabul, Afghanistan, and fell in love with traveling. Some of you might have come across this book before. I was working in Liberia, Monrovia, which is notorious for having bad electricity and bad internet. And so I spent 3 months. It was so bad, like when the internet's just good enough for YouTube to buffer, but the video won't load. That's the worst. So you're sitting there with nothing else to do. You're like, come on, buffer. Anyway, I ended up buying a bunch of books and came across the 4-Hour Work Week. As soon as I read it, it was like a crack hit that you can't let go of. The ideas of working online and being wherever you wanted to be. I was really obsessed with that. I couldn't let that idea go. Some of the advice that I took, the people I talked to gave me a lot of outdated information. I tried blogging and I didn't think I had any skills. I tried blogging for electricians. I tried YouTubing and podcasting about electricity, and electricians don't read. Yeah, like the blog, I worked on a year for it, and it was just a complete failure and a disaster. And same with YouTubing and podcasting. There was a pretty like a 5-year graveyard behind me. And I'm not sure if you guys have your own businesses or if you're still in a job, but I spent any extra time I had trying to build an online business, and it didn't work. As you can see by my neck tattoo, I make questionable life decisions and decided not to stop. I actually got on a call. There's a great app. It's called Intro. You can talk to really famous people for 15 minutes. I talked to the founder of Zillow, the real estate app. At the time, I was trying to podcast, so I talked to Sam Parr, host of My First Million. He's get onto Twitter right now. This is 2022. He was my first follower, but I was so bad at it. I couldn't do graphic design. Like my banner was all fucked up, like the letters were like behind my picture and my writing was terrible. He unfollowed me, and it was the most demotivating experience ever. But once you learn how to get attention, everything else falls into place. And so I spent 3 months learning how to write threads and all this stuff, and finally started to gain some traction. The biggest thing was I was growing a little bit. It took me 3 months to get to 100 followers or something like that. I was 28. I had a high net worth because I had a bunch of real estate I did investing. If I lost everything today, here's my 20-something step game plan to get it all back. I just listed everything I did, and I woke up and I got 1,000 followers, millions of impressions, tons of DMs, and that was probably the huge needle mover. It was really interesting because I found out that people do care about what you have to say about yourself and what you've done. There is a lot of common advice, and it's true. It's for other people, what's in it for them. But it was the point leading up to the beginning of online business starting to finally work.
Parker, there's so much in there that I can relate to. The 4-Hour Work Week, let me know in the reactions or in the chat on YouTube if the 4-Hour Work Week was similarly impactful for you, because that was a paradigm shift for me as well. And then you were talking about what I interpreted as product market fit. You're writing a blog post for electricians. I did something similar with the tutoring business around 2020. And it's crazy how so many of these different stories, like you've got your own unique journey, I've got my unique journey, everyone who's listening has their own unique journey, but there are similar themes across them all. You read something, we get this bit of advice, the light bulb moment, and it introduces you to what's possible. And then at some point, you realize that you made this huge mistake in trying to create this online business. It's that point where I think most people, it's a defining moment. You either decide to stop and give up because you think, oh, this isn't for me, or you persist. And in light of that moment of reaching the first failure, how do you bounce back? What's some advice that you could give someone who has that failure and is thinking about quitting, but is open to changing their mind and continuing? What would you tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the game changer is just having that desired state, like the dream state of what is on the other side of this if I succeed. And that's what kept me going. I was bit by the travel bug. And after the pandemic, the overseas work stopped. I went and worked in the middle of nowhere, USA, with 200 old men, electricians that had no ambition. It was a great paying gig, but it was pretty miserable. If you go on a vacation, man, I wish I could just be here all the time on my own terms and not have to go back. I just never got that taste out of my mouth. I always knew, okay, are other people doing this? Have other people done this? Then it's definitely possible for me. Not forgetting that other people are in that desired state where you want to get, and know that it's going to take twice as long as you expect to get there. Never giving up on that was it for me. I did a job in Brazil and I fell in love with the culture and the people. I made so many friends. You go to the bar and they're like, gringo, why are you drinking by yourself? That's weird. You meet the whole bar, their grandparents, their family. I never let that taste of just living that forever out of my mouth. And I think if you give yourself time to go somewhere for a week, take a vacation, you're like, I can be here whenever I want. I just have to put in the work. Just don't give up on that. I know it sounds cliche, but for me, I know that I can get there and I know it's on the other side. I think a lot of people forget that and don't visualize what is on the other side of doing this. I love location independence. I love not having an alarm clock. I love not living in the winter. I don't know if you guys have winter, but for me, where I grew up, I had 6 months of winter. I hate the snow. So that's all optional. If you see other people doing it, there's no reason you can't, but it just takes time.
I was hearing underlying that the importance of your why. For you, there was this strong motivation to have that location freedom. And I think, like for me, my why is my mum, she passed away when I was 12. She always believed in the importance of quality education. I thought I could get that from university and the tutoring business. I just didn't really believe in that model. Now I believe in alternative education, and that's what drives me. It seems most people who quit lose sight of their own why, and that's what causes them to stop. And it doesn't matter if you've got this crazy story like you do, Parker, or like you've lost a parent. Everyone has their own why, and it's objectively important. It doesn't need to be profound. And I think that's what some people miss. But changing trajectory a little bit. So notice that your course, it promises this 27 one-sentence marketing stories that big tech uses to make billions. And there's even a 6-word story that make grown men cry. So can you drop one of those one-liners or something to that effect? And then the follow-up is, how can a single sentence hit someone so emotionally? Can you break down what is going on behind the scene with those one-sentence one-liners?
So one of the biggest mistakes people make with like writing is just not being punctual. Like you can say a lot in as few words as possible. And that's why that was the first lesson there. So like, for example, what Hemingway coined it was iceberg theory. And so if you think about an iceberg, you only see a little bit of top of the water, but what's going to damage a ship is the huge iceberg under the water. The goal is to give them the tip of the iceberg in so few words as possible, but let the emotions sink the ship. And so essentially, Hemingway wrote, "For sale, baby shoes, never worn." That's 6 words. He's not saying the baby died, but he's giving you just enough to let your brain process it. And then the anchor sinks with the emotions. Another example is my mother taught me how to shave. What does that mean? He never had a father. being able to write punchy sentences like that really hit emotion is going to get a lot. Like you aren't in marketing or content creation, you're in the emotional delivery business. Your job is to transfer emotions as fast as possible in as few words as possible while giving the reader as little friction to experience that. And like another one's like the last man on earth heard a knock on the door. It's a contrasting vision, right? It arouses like mystery. It opens a loop. Oh, why is that the last man on earth? Why was there a knock on the door? Being able to do that is a powerful skill. And I recommend it to people if they're trying to get started. Something that I've seen in coaching clients is people write their whole story like a Bible. I remember this girl had a welcome email that was 8 pages long. It doesn't need to be like that. So I think that the first part that anyone should start is how can I deliver an emotional payoff as fast as possible?
Reminds me of the quote, and I think it's misattributed to Mark Twain. I was going to send a shorter letter, but I didn't have time.
Exactly.
It's a real skill. It's compression. How do you compress the essence of your story into the quote unquote short letter? It just takes time. It's really hard to communicate those 6 words, especially when you're writing, because you're so attached to the words you've written. Do you have any tips or tricks to help people create that effect of distilling their story into those 6 words or that one sentence? If you're writing a hook on X or Threads, how can we go about implementing that ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So you always want to start with the big idea. You can be a bad writer, but if you've got a great big idea, that'll do all the work for you. It's just knowing when you're starting, what is the point or what is the big idea or the emotional payoff that I want to give? Something that gets a lot of reactions and goes viral is fear-based marketing, which you should use like salt on meat. Use a little and it makes the meat taste good. But if you're using it too much, everyone's going to think you're a douchebag. You'll see those people, everyone's RIP writers, AI's coming in. Those accounts are no longer getting traction, which I think is ironic. If you focus everything around either your big idea, the payoff, everything will fall in place. The first line, you want to get someone to feel something as fast as possible. That's why the number one lie you're told hits people have an emotional urgency hot buttons. For example, people don't like being lied to. They don't like being deceived. They don't like being told they're wrong. When you hit that emotional button, it forces them to react and either click open, read more, or reshare it. You want to get them there as fast as possible. Any urgent hot button crisis you can tap into is very powerful. I always reverse engineer from what is the point? What am I saying? If you can have a contrarian take to what everyone else is saying, it's refreshing. If you've got evidence to back up why everyone is saying stuff that's wrong, you have a high chance of going viral. The subtle art of not giving a fuck. I'm a huge Mark Manson fan, and he wrote a blog post about how the self-help industry sucks. Everyone's saying the same thing. Here's my counterintuitive approach. And it went super viral and then it turned into a book that sold 20 million copies. He's built $1 million business off that big idea. So I think giving yourself time to think of a big idea, challenge whatever advice you see that's wrong, exposing a lie, creating an enemy, anything around that is a great way to start. Anytime common advice is a bunch of shit or you've been lied to about X, anything like that is going to trigger a fast reaction.
When everyone's zigging, that's when you should zag. The contrarian take sounds like you've come across that hook as well. You've been lied to, went super viral on X, and then we started using it over on Threads. And it's fundamentally just getting at the negativity bias because we evolved to look out for danger much quicker than to a beautiful sunrise. The same thing applies today, but in a different context. As you've described, Parker, it applies to getting attention. That's what it all comes back to. And look, that's how you create great stories with the 6-word storytelling idea. Notice that you've called storytelling the fabric of human existence, and you've dropped terms like neural coupling. So pretend I'm a 5-year-old. What is that? And how does it make people feel your stories? What does it help us do?
Yeah, so neural coupling is just a fancy term for essentially people read something or they read your stuff and they picture themselves in it like a movie. So you're writing a story and they're like actually imagining this. And that's when it gets like super powerful and persuasive. And so a lot of it's just, there's a lot that goes into it. Essentially, like anytime you can have all the sensory details of being like feeling of the sand, the smell of the ocean breeze, the sound of the waves crashing, the sun setting, people start to picture it. Anytime you can add all of the senses in there. Another one is doing your research and knowing who you're writing to, knowing your avatar. I create a problem bank. I've got hundreds of problems that I've found online. Anytime you introduce a problem, people are obsessed with problems. That's why people watch dramas like Sex and the City, where they just have like problems all the time. Not to diss Sex and the City, my girlfriend loves it. And like any show like that is just drama. They have little problems. She cheated on her. He did this. Humans are just obsessed with problems. If you can use a relatable problem, like what you said, the 4-hour work week, that's an anchor. If I know that my audience read the 4-hour work week, I can talk about that, the senses and the failures that put me on. If people can relate to that, they picture their own past and then relate to you. I think right now we're in a trust recession. People don't believe everything they see online, especially in the age of AI when anyone can write anything and with video fakes and all this stuff. Anytime that you can have that, like neural coupling's fancy, but just being relatable, like you write about a problem that you had that somebody else had, and you really just dive into the sensory details of, oh man, I tried blogging for electricians. I spent a year of my life. I gave up weekends. I gave up dating to try to start a blog for electricians. Could you imagine how that felt, realizing that electricians don't read and that I'd been lied to? If you're writing that and people are picturing themselves or felt that relatable scenario, they're going to trust you. It's the fastest way to earn trust. When people trust you, they buy from you. I'm lucky enough now at this, I have about 200 people that just repeat buy from me. But it's because I've told stories they relate to. I know who they are. I know what their problems are. And I'm constantly giving them content around that. And then I also use self-deprecating humor. Humor writing is one of the hardest skills because if a joke doesn't land, you're just going to look weird and they're going to be like, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. And even comedians like Chris Rock go to a dive bar and practice his stand-up and they often fail. But with stand-up, you can act, you can express yourself, you can be goofy, but with writing, you can't do that. So the easiest way is self-deprecation. Anytime you can make fun of yourself, people trust you more and they also get a laugh. Anytime I can throw stones at myself. A good hook I always use in my emails is, as a man with a neck tattoo, it's safe to say I make a lot of questionable decisions. Instantly, people get a giggle. They're like, oh, I trust this guy. The trust factor is the biggest thing. And I think a lot of people forget that.
I've always thought trust and authority. And if you can hit those 2 points, it's going to lower the barriers and the resistance someone has to a lot of things we do online. It comes to someone taking the content we put out there more seriously in terms of just reading it because it's so hard to get attention today, or buying a product that you're selling. And then you've got those 200 super fans. And it's important for everyone who's listening to remember that Parker has 50,000 followers on X, 20,000 on LinkedIn, and 8,000 newsletter subscribers. If you think about the tens of thousands of people in Parker's world, 200 is such a minute percent of that. I don't think it's necessary to have tens of thousands of followers to get that core group of super fans who are all about your story. If Parker's a new product, I'm buying. I don't care what it is. To me, that's the power of the authenticity of the storytelling and the personal brand today, especially in this age of AI. I'm a big fan of frameworks. It just helps me learn things because I've got ADHD and those frameworks just help me. It's like a great memory device. What is one storytelling framework that most copywriters or online writers don't talk about that you think is important?
Yeah, definitely. I have a client storytelling framework that I absolutely love, and most people get it wrong. Essentially, what you'll have is like anything for testimonials or client work. If you can tell a good client story or a story about how you helped somebody, it helps you gain credibility. But if you tell it, you'll get inbound leads. So if I ever need to get more leads, I use these in my autoresponder, my welcome sequence. Essentially, your client is the hero, and every story starts with the force to change. Some kind of event forced the hero to change. So your client had something happen that forced them to make a change. For example, I had a fitness client on Instagram, and then the algorithm changed, and he was no longer able to get leads. So he was forced to make a change. He seeks a solution and he fails. So he tries to figure something else out. and he fails. Then he encounters the guide, which is entrusts your services. You get started and have a small win. We got traction. And this is the point where everyone makes a mistake because they're just like, yeah, my client met me and he made tens of thousands of dollars and it was fine. But anyone that knows anything is it's never smooth, especially in client work. There's so many different scenarios and variables. Essentially what happens is then you release an unexpected obstacle that made you fail. They started to get results, but something went wrong. And then you show how you went the extra mile for that client, that customer to get results. For this example, it's okay, we'll say my client hired me to do ghostwriting on Twitter. He went viral the first time and he started getting leads, but then that algorithm changed. Didn't know what I was going to do. My system didn't work for him. So I had to hit the ground running and figure out how can I get this guy leads. So then I looked into LinkedIn and realized I can cross-post content from Twitter to LinkedIn and start outbound messaging. We got the big result. And now my client has a consistent lead generation system that I run for him. By showing that I failed and things didn't work and that you went the extra mile, that is, it could only just be a sentence, but that one is like instant trust. So I use that one. It's pretty crazy. I have it in my autoresponder and I've got 3 of them in there. I'm actually changing my welcome sequence, but those get twice the click-through rate. Basically, I get all my sales from them. A good click rate is like 1 to 2%. Those stories, just that framework, get like 5 to 6%. If I need clients, I'm doing a hybrid model where I do course launches, product launches, and some client work. If I need clients, I'll post the same one on my socials and I always get inbound leads.
That is the nugget for me. Just that kind of one sentence where it relates to what you were talking about a moment ago with the self-deprecating humor and how really what you're communicating there is that I'm not perfect. I'm a flawed human being like you. And that comes across in making jokes about a neck tattoo, as well as what I tried with my client didn't work initially and we failed, but then we tried something else. It's incorporating so many classic elements of psychology. If someone's being vulnerable, it makes you trust them more. And it's also going for that whole idea of the underdog. It makes so much sense. And it's crazy how it can just be a sentence that communicates that and increases conversions as well. That's really cool. Do you apply that framework to your social media posts as well, where you're conveying the failure or vulnerability in the approach you've taken with a client?
Every time I try to admit a brutal truth, but it needs to be said. Anytime you can show vulnerability and bigger mistakes, you can see everywhere on social media, people are beating their chests, sending paid ads with their Lamborghinis and McLarens, yet they don't have one. You're consistently showing up and showing your mistakes. The big problem is a lot of people will show their mistake, but there won't be a payoff or a lesson. That'll make it look like you're complaining. Oh man, I really messed up. This was so hard. But here's what I found out. Here's the lesson I learned from this. People love that. They don't get a lot of engagement, but you'll get more profile visits, which means more people signing up for your email, for your stuff. Anytime you can do that, it's like the copywriting framework that's, oh, I had a problem. And then you agitate what were the emotional stakes. This problem cost me a lot of money. And then what was the solution? It's your point, the lesson. What is the takeaway that you're going to give the reader? And you can really pack that into 4 simple sentences. It's a banger.
Like when you were talking about that storytelling framework a moment ago, where you've got the hero and that's a client, and then the guide in the case of your example. Have you read Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller?
That's a great book.
Totally agree. If anyone has not it's really good. My warning is that don't expect to enjoy movies after you have read that book, because it does ruin basically every movie afterwards. You can start to predict it when you're watching a movie. It's so effective. It was a real game changer for me. There are so many frameworks online and very hard to distill the signal from the noise. The hero's journey. I've noted that when I was stalking you online, you've said the real hero story has 2 battles. You've got the outside fight and then you've got the inside demons. How do you weave both of those together into a great email, a great post, content, conversation, anything? How do you blend those 2 together when you go and write online?
This idea comes from Michael Hogg, a famous Hollywood screenwriter. Will Smith called him one of the best storytellers on earth. He says the hero has 2 journeys, the inner battle and the outer battle. It's powerful because you can create contrast and juxtaposition. Like people are obsessed with contrast. Like human beings think it's A or B, black or white, this or that. There's no in between, right? Like in reality, you, like there's like infinite options of what you can do, but humans always think of things like I only have two options, right? Like great writers, like you'll always see Dan Coe, he's always drawing a line in the sand. You can be this or you can be that. When really it's not like that, but that's how humans think. And so when you have the two heroes' journeys, what you can do is on the outside, everything was great. You always see people saying it. On the outside, he's living on the beach, this perfect light, but on the inside, he's never felt more empty. And so like you can just use it in 2 sentences, but what it does is it just creates conflict very fast and juxtapositions. People see this contrast and they immediately see more attention. So like what inside successes bring external conflicts and what external conflicts bring internal conflicts, right? Like how is it contrasting each other? And if you can use that, like I said, you can use it in 2 sentences. Inside was great, outside was bad, or outside is great, inside is bad. And anytime you can have that, people relate to it, right? I'm sure we've all had a time when your external circumstances are great, but you felt bad on the inside, or you felt great and things were bad on the outside.
For sure. It reminds me of Vanessa Lau. I first came across Vanessa on YouTube. She posted this video about how on the outside, everything was going great. She was getting the brand deal. She was getting lots of subscribers. She was making shitloads of money. Everyone was like Vanessa. But on the inside, she was miserable and burnt out. Then she took some time off. She posted this video explaining the story. That was what allowed me to connect to her. And that's why I subscribed to her and made me, I still remember it today. And that was probably a year or 2 ago. Is that kind of what we're getting at here with the outside fight, the outside battle, but then the inner demons? Is that an appropriate example?
Exactly.
Powerful. Because it's getting to that vulnerability as well. Here's what's really happening. Here's what other people can't see, but behind closed doors. It's cool to see this underlying thread, pun intended.
Yeah.
So getting into audience building and monetization, then go into some questions and answers. With the, like I've already mentioned, you've a massive following, and it hasn't been with ads or fancy funnels. It's the storytelling that's driving the movement. What are a couple of things that you felt made a difference in the way that you connected with people online beyond the obvious thing of telling your story? Was there a specific move or like light bulb moment for you where you realized that this is going to change everything for me in the way that I build my brand online?
Yeah, it was my first product launch, and it's something I call the friend effect. You always hear people talk about doing the things that don't scale. I spent a year growing on Twitter and made so many friends. If you make a friend a day, you've got 365 friends. It was amazing. I launched my first course and it did really well. I noticed all of my first buyers were the friends I made online. And so I think people really undercut that, but that definitely was like, wow, this is real. You made a lot of money. And that gave me a lot of friction, but basically who's going to promote your stuff at the end of the day? It's going to be the friends that you make. A lot of you, I'm sure you've already met people online that are transactional, not looking at people as a means to an end, but actually just reaching out and saying, hey, loved your content about X. If I can ever support you with something, let me know. And when those people ask you to share stuff, share it. If you see they're launching a book, buy it, repost it, just be a decent person. I think a lot of people miss this. It's easy to get selfish, but those little things do add up. You'll see that all the friends that you made after a year will promote your stuff.
I can't help but think about one of the members, Sam Mwanga, who talks about the connection economy and how that difference is everything. People who make an effort to connect are the ones who can build and create great things. It sounds like this, I forget what you called it, but just making friends online and that actually helping with the way that you can build your own brand. It comes down to being a decent human and how it's really important not to lose sight of that. The fact that we're online changes nothing about being a decent human. It's more important because your reach is amplified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Algorithms reward it. The more people they see returning and commenting on your stuff, they notice that you're building a community, which is what they want. The more people you meet, The more friends that you have, it's not the sexiest thing, but eventually if you're commenting and making friends, imagine having 365 people commenting on your stuff every day. That's what it comes down to.
And a key part of that is taking a year to make friends. One friend a day, 365 days. This stuff does take time. And on the topic of time, for those on the call, if you've got questions for Parker, chuck them in the chat. We'll be going into some Q&A in a moment. Most of the people who are listening are at the stage where they've built a couple hundred followers or tens of thousands. Shout out Hussey, just under 30K. Most people are sitting between 0 to 10K. And we're going through this process of finding the niche and then thinking about what sort of product or service to offer. What's something that you found, maybe it's an unconventional tip or advice to help someone bridge the gap from posting online to monetizing? How did you go about that? What's something that you would have done differently that you think would be helpful for us to get advice about?
There's a lot that goes into it. My biggest mistake was I started getting traction and growing, and I just kept being obsessed with growth. But build and launch something and fail, like no matter what size you're at. At the end of the day, you really need to know marketing, how to find demand, what problems people have, what skill is in demand, build something around it, build a digital product, build an ebook, build a course, build a mini course, make it something simple to build in a few days. Just make your first dollar and focus on that. You don't need a huge audience to make a good business. There's plenty of people that have a few thousand followers that can solve a burning crisis that people have. So either teach someone a skill or have a big burning problem that you know how to solve for people that's in demand. Launch as much as you can. Once you make that first dollar, once you make that first $100, no matter how big your audience is, it takes time. But the skill that you learn from building and launching, people will pay you to do that for them. And once you make that first dollar, the first $100, the first 1,000, crack it. It's something that I chased for 5 years and it took me a long time. But I wish that I just started launching sooner. It's a lot of fun building something and launching it, but learning those skills of like persuasion, learn copywriting, start an email list. Because like from my personal experience, I have 44,000 followers on Twitter. Only 3% of my audience now sees my content there, right? And so like having an email list, knowing social media skills to where you can go to another platform if you have to, if things change. But I would just say to start launching. What problems have you solved? And then it's like the peanut butter and jelly framework, right? Write every step it takes to build a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And if you've solved the problem, write every step you took to solve that problem, put it in a Google Doc. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, and make it so easy. Make it $7 and just tell people, hey, I solved this big problem and I'm just trying to make my first online dollar to prove I'm not crazy or chasing a pipe dream. You'd be surprised just by saying that people will buy it. But once you get that, you are so motivated. You can do anything in the world. Growth is important, but building and launching, even if no one buys, now you know how to launch stuff and a skill, and just reiterating that process over and over.
Is there a perfect time to jump from audience building to monetizing, or would you sway more towards the whole just start mentality?
Yeah, I would say audience building is a double-edged sword. It's great. You get attention. You can get a lot of views. But if you're not getting the right attention or channeling that attention towards your business, what's it really worth? I was working with a business partner, and we were working with Instagram creators that had 1 million followers that didn't have a business. And their attention was either their abs or wearing scandalous clothing and getting a lot of attention. And guess what? They couldn't make any money. They spent all this time building an audience that can't pay them. It really affects their minds when you're talking to them. It's, oh, I want to offer the world something besides what I look like. And you just spent 5 years building an audience on just what you look like. It's better to find that out in the beginning. Am I building this wrong? Than just growing and growing to find out that you built the wrong kind of attention. Step number 1 is getting attention, but people get addicted to attention. When I started getting a bunch of views and growing, I became addicted to it. I know how to get attention online. People are commenting and saying nice things, but that doesn't necessarily convert to a business, which is the end goal. I grew my audience on storytelling, but recently I've rebranded it to digital marketing, product launches. Made a great business out of it, talking to mentors. Is this going to be a 7-figure business? Probably not. If I want to go to that step, I have to learn a skill and build something that people will pay a lot more money for. I'm not saying you shouldn't learn it. You can definitely make a great business off of it, but it's something to keep in mind when you're doing it. What's getting you attention won't necessarily get you paid. In 5 years, if I do this, where am I going to be at? If I have 100,000 followers around this, am I going to be able to have a business that does that? Like I said, these are all just trials and errors that I learned. I found something that was a hot topic and it did really well for me. But sometimes, in the words of Tim Ferriss, you have to kill your golden goose in order to get another one. Just be careful because there are trends. I've had friends that made $1 million off of AI. It just stopped. But you got to think, is this sustainable? Is this long-term? Or am I just getting all this traction and attention because I found a hot trend? If you are aware of that, then capitalize on the trend, but always be investing in new skills. If you are doing audience building, start learning marketing, email marketing, the next thing on the next layer. There's a quote somewhere, you have to be like Tarzan in business, especially in the online world. Like you find a vine that you're swinging on, but you always have to be looking for the next vine. And so just keep developing your skill set, right? Things are changing fast, especially with technology. But if you keep learning these new skills that compound into your entrepreneurship, you basically become bulletproof.
That's my favorite one-liner. What's getting attention isn't necessarily what will get you paid. I think everyone listening to this, myself included, should print that because it's so easy to lose sight of it. This is what Parker has learned. We're getting the lesson without the scar. Most people will not take it that seriously because they themselves have not gotten that scar to get that lesson. Just pretend you did get that scar and learned that lesson, because I'm sure Parker would say it would save you a lot of time and money to accept that now, as though you've been through the trials and tribulations. It can take a lot of time to course correct. And with that, let's go into some Q&A. We've got a question from Sam X. Moringa. Can you share with us a moment when you connected with someone you never expected to connect with over something you had in common?
Yeah, it's happened a lot. I guess the biggest one for me is I'm a diehard fan. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this guy. His name's Derek Johansson. He founded a course called Copy Hour. He's trained Sam Parr how to write copy for The Hustle. He's trained more seven-figure copywriters than anybody else. I wrote an email about building a course, and I'm like, I want to build something like Derek Johansson. Have you heard of this guy? He created Copy Hour. He's trained seven-figure copywriters. His course has been around and relevant for 15 years. I really want to build something like that. I didn't know he was on my email list. I had no idea that he was reading my emails. And he replied and he goes, holy shit. He's let me know about this product. I want to affiliate for it. In October, he affiliated for it. It did about 45 grand on the launch. You never know who's reading. That serendipity, that crazy shit, the longer you're in this, I DM Justin Welsh. I consider him a friend. Those people aren't far away. If there's people you want to be friends with, don't talk to them expecting a retweet or a repost. There's a psychological factor to commenting on someone's stuff every day. They see you showing up every day. They're going to engage with you. That stuff happens to me more and it just blows my mind. And like I said, I was just an electrician. If I can do it, you guys can too. When he replied, I went around screaming like a little girl. It's like being a little girl and Justin Bieber replies, I want you to come backstage to my concert. That was that moment for me.
Increase your luck surface area. The longer that you do it, the greater your surface area grows. That's what I think about all the time. Another question from Marcus. You mentioned about moving from storytelling into digital marketing. How did you start that transition in your newsletter or content? Did you drop it in now and then, or just go all in?
Yeah, it was pretty brutal because I spent 2.5 years building a big audience and newsletter and brand and business around it. I actually paid Derek Johansson a lot of money for a 3-hour phone call with him and his business mentor. The first thing they told me was to drop the storytelling gig. Referring to Mark Manson, if I could have a superhero, it would be Disappointment Panda, who would go and tell everyone door to door the brutal truths they need to hear. And no one wants to hear it. And that's the first thing he said on this 3-hour call. He just tore apart my business. Followed up 6 months later and asked for a review. I was questioning every life decision and everything I've been told. But it was groundbreaking. I just switched. That's what he told me to do. A lot of the most successful people pivot. You have to evolve sometimes. He's just changed. And so that's what I did. It has been ridiculous. My business has gone up. I've gotten a lot more client work. The problem with storytelling is that it's an amazing skill. It is the fabric of humanity. I still believe in it, but it's secondary to everything, right? People will look for your services for content marketing, for copywriting, for software development. Those are high ticket skills that are in demand. People will seek you out. People aren't necessarily seeking out a storyteller, right? But once I changed my content and especially my emails, the responses I get from people are insane. My sales, I can charge more for digital marketing products, email marketing, just because it's a more tangible outcome. If you learn email marketing, you can get paid to send emails from wherever you want. If you learn storytelling, it's a great skill. What is a tangible outcome? You can write in ways that are great, right? It's great for being persuasive for your writing, but is it going to get people to that desired state? If it is a vehicle to get people to that desired state, they're willing to pay a lot more for it. I just started writing about different stuff. It was tough, man. For the first 2 months, I felt like I lost my voice. I have my own experiences. I have client experiences. And the replies I get to my emails are phenomenal. I get them every day. It's just been way better. It's definitely turned up the dial, but it hurt. It sucked. it's
One step backwards, two steps forwards is what I'm hearing from that. And it's worth it.
Worth it. I spend a ridiculous amount of money talking to coaches or mentors. Anytime you can talk to people like that, you're just going to move a lot faster. Anytime you can go to somebody and get your business absolutely destroyed, it hurts, but it's worth it in the long run.
Can you share a lesson you've learned during your time in Africa that made you realize something about yourself, your purpose, or the world around you?
That it gave me back hair. Like it just shot me right in the manhood. But in all seriousness, confidence is the lack of fear of failure. You fail so much that you no longer fear failing. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I was on the equator working outside. It was always hot. There wasn't a nice weather day. We were working in a place called Mamba Point. There's black mambas. I got malaria. I got colonitis. Fucked up out there. The crazy thing is doing electrical work. We didn't have an electrical supply store for advanced electrical components. Like you had to make stuff work with what you had. And so I became extremely resourceful. And over the years, my confidence was crazy because if you go through crazy experiences and hardship, whenever I have a problem now, I refer to some of those moments of being in Africa by myself with colonitis, being sick. I'm like, is this as bad as that? Then no, it's not going to be a problem. Doing extremely hard shit for a long time gave me confidence. I was never a confident person. I was a fat kid growing up, really bad at dating. That experience, anything you can do like this, and especially in the online business journey, it's going to take time and it's really hard. Don't believe anything people tell you online. You'll see people with Stripe screenshots. I know people earning $30,000 a month. You have a business partner, so you're earning half of that. And then you're in Canada, so your taxes are a lot higher. And then I know that you're only getting 30% of the profit. So really, you're only making $5,000. Don't let any of that stuff sour you. It's hard and it takes time. And those people are just doing it for street cred. But on the other side of this, if you do your online thing, you don't necessarily have to go to West Africa, but it's going to give you so much confidence. Getting that first dollar, getting that first $100, just launching and failing and doing the hard shit is going to give you this confidence. And it's people are just magnetized to confident people. And like, because the people that fear failure and see people that don't necessarily feel failure, like they look at you a different way. More people will ask you questions and reach out for help. Make sure you help them. I try to talk to everybody that asks me questions, no matter how big or small. At the end of the day, relationships are all that you have, right? When you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be able to count your money, but the people that surround you on your deathbed, you know you did it because you built those relationships. It's everything you have at the end of the day.